Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football presented by Boost Mobile. I am here with my three best friends, three beautiful people. So excited. Liz Loza, Stephania Bell, and of course Field Yates. Everyone knows you guys. Listen, we had 2 Monday Night Football games. We really had like 1.5 Monday Night Football games last night. We'll talk about both of them as we always do. Stephania, we're going to dive into a bunch of injuries with you as well as a big waiver wire segment like we always do on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, how are you guys doing after that late Monday night?
I thought that was perhaps the most enjoyable fantasy football game of the season. There have been more dramatic games, like Week 1, Chiefs-Ravens was awesome. But last night, everybody just kept on scoring. Like, even Sam Laporta had like a crazy 7+ points.
That was at the tight end.
He went wild.
Unreal.
He went nuts at tight ends. It was a really fun game. You guys know how like sometimes you'll go on a flight and you won't get Wi-Fi. So out of the goodness of their heart, the airlines would be like, you know, your Wi-Fi didn't work, or like the AC was busted. Here is an $8 rebate. It go towards your account to using your next flight. I know that's like incredibly generous of them.
Very
to do.
generous, yeah.
Last night, like for those of you that powered through Titans and Dolphins, we're giving you an extra 4 minutes of fantasy focus today because congratulations for surviving that.
Yeah, that was a tough one last night. We'll dive into both of those football games. You know what? I should do this really quickly though, just to make sure that.
Hey!
No big deal.
Is that game worn?
Of course it's game worn. Field Yates. Penny Sewell handed this to me after the game. You can tell because we are basically the same size.
Yes.
It's just been in the dryer since last night. That's how it's been
This is
shrunk
why
down.
Rosie does the laundry. We
That's
established that
guys.
the other
I
day.
wore this all day. Once I got home, I watched the football game in it. I slept in it, and then I just came in wearing the same jersey because that's the kind of
Lions
person
fan
I
you
am.
are, yeah.
That's the way it
Obsessive
works
fan,
out. So,
yeah.
all right, we're gonna get into both of those games, but first, let's kick things off with the opening drive. Stephania, we try to have some fun with the opening drive. I'm not sure this one is going to be a fun situation, but we did get a little bit of an update on Christian McCaffrey. What can you tell us about CMC?
Well, what we heard yesterday was that he has tendonitis in both Achilles tendons.
So it's great news.
Yeah, that's not great.
Listen, I think, the headline is certainly a bit intimidating, right? Like, everybody's like, oh, how could it get any worse? Actually, from the world of physical therapy where I come from, it's not necessarily a surprise. We could get into all the biomechanical adjustments that happen when you're trying to compensate for one thing. The fact that I've talked about this before, that he was a multi-sport athlete, including being a track athlete for years before he switched completely to football. He does a lot of track training. His track workouts part of why he's in such good shape. It's a lot of use on the tendons. There are probably changes in those tendons over time. You overload, you get an acute exacerbation of tendonitis on top of the calf strain. These are evolutions that you might normally see with an athletic patient. So the better part of the news is that apparently since he's come back from Germany, he's been feeling much better. There's talk about him getting back into some ground running workouts this coming week. So I would not panic over this. I would look at it as, you hope that the treatment to address the inflammation really did help kind of kickstart him into the next phase and being ability to train and ramp up his activity towards a return. That being said, you can't look for a timeline right now. This is all about balance. It's balance of ramping up your training and not triggering another inflammatory setback. So I think be patient. I wouldn't be looking at him to come back anytime in the next couple of weeks, but if you're interested in McCaffrey for the back half of your season, could really pay off.
So can I ask you that question as somebody that obviously knows way more than my silly brain does? If you were in a fantasy league, knowing all the things you know, you are in at least one fantasy league.
Wait,
Would
you guys actually play?
taking the Mike Clay route here, yes.
Yeah.
Would you go out if you were 3-1 or 4-0 and try and make a move for CMC because you feel like there is enough meat on the bone for the second half of the season, or does it give you pause given what this injury is?
Yes. In other words, there's both. But you have to be willing to take a risk, because if I were to sit here and tell you like, oh, definitely, it will be fine because now that we've had this and he's had this treatment, he's going to ramp up, he's going to be fine. There's no way to know that. The people who are working with him don't know that. Christian McCaffrey doesn't know that. You are on a program that is geared at making these steps towards getting you back to being able to play football. And you're looking at a calendar where you're targeting a return that will get you through February, because this is what the 49ers are playing for, with the expectation of going to the postseason. And then you might have to do some major overhaul in the way you work in the offseason. You're looking at trying to make it for X number of weeks. And we don't know how that's going to work out. It's going to be a day-to-day assessment. But if it works well, and if really this has kickstarted him to where we hoped he would be in week 1, and you get that second half of the season production from McCaffrey. Now, mind you, the volume may not be the same out of the gate, right? They've got Jordan Mason. They've seen what he can do. Nobody's going to probably bring Christian McCaffrey back and have him immediately assume that whole workload. But if you think that this could be really valuable to you in the fantasy playoffs and you can afford a stash of Christian McCaffrey to get you through those late weeks of the season, then maybe it's worth doing.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Love it. I don't want to spend more time on injuries until we have to, Stephania. Let's save the rest of them for a little bit later in the show.
And there are many.
Well, but there's one that when we get into the games, there's one that I want to highlight in a positive way.
Great. Love to hear that. All right, let's kick things off then with Lions and Seahawks. Talking about that, this is what every Monday Night Football game should be for those that are sitting at home and watching. 42-29, just scoring all over the place. I want to start with the Seahawks.
Yes.
Ken Walker.
Yeah. That's where I wanted to go.
Awesome.
Because remember, he was out with an abdominal injury, an oblique injury. Did you see what he did with his core muscles to make that incredible play where it looked like he got turned around and basically flipped over
Alex Anzalone
and used his core strength to get up and keep going? That is how you know that somebody's past an injury, and that's when you feel really good about it. I thought he looked great.
Averaged 6.6 yards per carry against your Detroit Lions, who have stuffed every other opposing running back, including James Conner last week.
Yeah.
Right? That was a disastrous showing for Conner. So, yes, he's obviously healthy. The 3 touchdowns helped, but to me, the YPC was really illustrative, thank you.
I think it's illustrative. I'm not the Ivy guy, but I think it's illustrative is the right.
Illustrative.
Yeah,
all right, we'll stick with it.
We'll
It was
leave
really
the
illustrative.
grammar to the two in the back.
I think consensusly we can't come up with the
Oh, well done.
little fantasy football now throwback there. Yeah, he was unbelievable. Like, I don't Field other than here's my only. I just want to say this. My only complaint was that we didn't see more. Like, I wanted him to hit 100 yards. I'll just say that.
Oh my God.
12 for 80. I know. I'm just going to be that guy. 3
love it.
touchdowns was unbelievable. Like, he has this home run potential. I didn't want him to score on that long run where he kind of broke it outside as a Lions fan. But as a manager of Ken Walker, where he was on my bench in a number of leagues because I didn't play him against the Detroit Lions.
To the tune of 33.6.
Yeah, I got it, Stephania. I understand. Yes, it was a tough one. But he was absolutely unbelievable. The passing game, though, is like really where things were at. I was disappointed in Jackson Smith and Jigba, but Geno Smith absolutely came out and did some unbelievable things with DK Metcalf and those pass catches.
He's playing some ridiculous football right now, is Geno Smith. And by the way, that line could have looked even better. And Walker's would have looked a touch worse, but still incredible at, it would have been 27.5 points because Geno had a touchdown that was initially ruled touchdown on the field to DK Metcalf, in which his elbow was down just ever so slightly prior to the ball crossing the goal line. But Geno's been incredible this year, guys. And a couple of things we got going for us right now. On Ken Walker III, I thought the most important part was this. Other than getting through the game healthy and playing awesome, it was his show. Zach Charbonnet relegated to basically like every third or fourth series. And that very final drive of the game, sort of garbage time. But when they're in obvious passing situations, it does seem like they'll lean towards Zach Charbonnet. Walker's totally fine. You know, top 12 running back, no two ifs, ands, or buts about it. Guys, defensively, this is a team that's made other offenses look pretty good. Like the Patriots had a competitive game against the Seahawks, and they're not a very good offense. Like obviously last night, the Lions completely dominated them. Geno may be throwing the football a ton this season.
Yeah.
Geno not getting a touchdown on the final drive. Geno not getting that touchdown because there was an elbow distance. That's about the margin that I won my War Room League matchup by. So I feel for all of it, everybody out there, because you know the other 3 of us do play fantasy, even though Field does not. I felt for everyone who is hanging on to the final drive of Monday Night Football to decide if you were going to win your weekly matchup.
I couldn't go to bed until like 2 a.m. last night after watching this Detroit Lions offense. It was unbelievable. Jared Goff did not throw an incompletion, and he caught a touchdown pass. Guys,
Unbelievable.
Yeah, he was. That was great.
I don't
By the
even
way,
know what do you say about this.
Like, it was incredible. Let's just put some context on this. Jared Goff, and I get it. He is like, yesterday we were talking about Baker Mayfield, and so with Jared Goff, like, I would say I don't have the same level of confidence in Jared Goff to be a weekly fantasy starter as I do now with Baker Mayfield. But Jared has this within him. and put some damn respect on this guy's name. 18 for 18. The most
That's
ever
unbelievable.
completions without an incompletion in a single game in NFL history. And this was not dink and dunk city, by the way.
No.
Beautiful deep shot down the field to J-Mo for that 80-yard touchdown, 70-yard touchdown.
Yep.
Throwing the ball all over the place. I thought Goff was incredible last night. Such a fun player to watch. Amon-Ra with a dime as well.
Well,
I
they,
mean,
they both were perfect on
in
the
their
night.
bag, yeah. So an awesome performance from Jared Goff. Still going to be the kind of guy that's more matchup dependent because he adds zero, zilch, nada in the rushing game. He's a better receiver than he is a runner. But a great night from him. Amon-Ra, such a joy to watch that guy play
he's
football
so
every
good.
single
What a
Monday
gift.
or Sunday. They go into a bye this week. It stinks to not have them for this upcoming week. Plus side, it's hard to feel like you're totally out of the race by the end of week 5. You'll have those horses, specifically Amon-Ra and the 2 running backs, available for the rest of the season. Interesting last night that the Lions allowed Jahmyr Gibbs to feast at the goal line.
Saw that.
That was good. And they're the most, clearly, and Daniel, you've been shouting this from, the rooftops of Motor City since the day we started the show. Clearly the 2 best running backs on the same team for fantasy purposes. Lock them in, top 20 players. It's so fun to watch them. They are thunder and lightning. David Montgomery had one of the coolest plays of the entire NFL season.
He's had a couple. He's floated a couple of
Yes.
times. We'd love to see Monte get in there. But yes, I love that you mentioned that Gibbs did not have a single target, but 2 touches inside the 5.
Yeah. Both of these running backs inside the top 20 for the 4th week in a row. Both of them are very startable in fantasy. The only disappointing thing from this Lions offense from a fantasy perspective was just Sam Laporta not quite hitting the same mark as some of these other guys. But I'll tell you what.
But signs of life.
Yeah.
Also,
Signs of
ran,
life.
Looked
ran
better.
the same number of routes as Amon-Ra.
Hey, love that. Did you know that Jared Goff has more receiving touchdowns than Travis Kelce this year?
Oh.
In our Michigan men group, it's like every tight end besides Trey McBride has fewer touchdowns than Jared Goff.
That's true.
Don't get me
That's true.
started.
All right. When we come back, we are going to quickly dive into Titans and Dolphins. Make sure you stick around. Back here on Fantasy Focus Football, Daniel Dopp, Liz Loza, Stephania Bell, and Field
That
Yates.
was not a great tease. You're stick around for us to talk about the Titans and the Dolphins.
We'll be quick about this. Let's start with the Dolphins.
All right, the
Because for
Dolphins lose. That's the end of our recap.
That's I think. How do we tell people not to be in panic mode?
You can't.
Because you are.
Can't.
If you've got Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or Devon Achane, you've got to be in panic mode right now.
We had one card left to play with Miami. One. It was the hope that maybe Snoop Huntley could make this a slightly more respectable offense.
Oh.
No. Unfortunately, not. And I'm not sure that 6 days more, they play the Patriots this upcoming Sunday, is enough for me to feel like, you know what? Snoop's going to learn enough with the playbook and going to have enough chemistry developed with these 2 receivers that they go back into your lineup. No, until Tua returns. And on the positive side, Adam Schefter did say yesterday that there is an expectation that Tua could be back as soon as he is eligible, which is week 8, that you could have the same old Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. This is where I think they're not startable right now. I've got Tyreek as the highest ranked Dolphins wide receiver for next week. He's at wide receiver 29 for me. And that felt too high. Okay. They're not startable. This is where I think things get interesting. Not only do they have a bad quarterback situation, they go into a bye, I believe, 2 weeks from now or next week. They have a bye before Tua returns. You've got 3 more weeks before Tua is back, 5, 6, 7. If you're in a good spot, this is the time to be thinking long and hard about going after Tyreek Hill. Yeah. Conversely, if you're in a bad spot with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, this might be salvage your season by taking 75 cents on the dollar. It might be, right? I mean, they're not going to win you your week for the next 3 weeks.
They have a week 6 bye.
Week 6 bye, yeah.
So, I mean, unless your confidence is so significant that this Patriots defense stinks, I just don't know how you can expect this. I don't even know how to describe it. This is like you go out there and you buy a Lamborghini, and then the minute you bring it back into the garage, someone just takes all the tires off. And it doesn't matter. It's no longer useful.
Well, it's 23 yards for Tyreek Hill. To put context to it, 23 yards. The over-under receptions was set at 49.5 for him, which I thought was incredibly low.
Wow.
Right? We knew, though, that probably Snoop was going to underthrow him a couple of times. We saw that. I was also astonished at how inefficient the backfield was. Devon Achane's longest run was 5 yards. Devon Achane, 5 yards is his longest run. You thought that maybe the mobility that Huntley would bring could open up some running lanes. Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert were both a little bit banged up. So we did see some Jalen Wright, which was at least at least something new to see, at least something to look at, gander upon, if you will.
Yeah, it didn't feel good, though, watching any of this. Stephania, do you have anything on Jeff Wilson?
Well, I was just going to say it's adding injury to insult on this team because Jeff Wilson Jr. hurt his knee in pregame warmups. Like, that's how bad things are going for the Dolphins. So he was not available. They only had 2 running backs available last night. It ended up that they had, obviously, Devon Achane and Jalen Wright playing probably more than they would have liked him to have played, but that's the situation they were in. Raheem Mostert's chest injury, I don't think people really realize it was a little more significant than it's kind of gone under the radar with all the other issues that the Dolphins have had. But
Need him back bad.
They do need him back, and he's one of the. He is tough. Like, they will tell you down in Dolphins land that he is very tough. So this is for him not to play. This is bad. The hope is maybe he can get involved a little bit more and be out there this week. Just one more thing on Tyreek Hill. That stat line would have looked different if Huntley had just had a little more touch on that big bomb because he did look for him deep. And you think about that's where Tyreek Hill makes his hay, as Field's been saying recently.
Yes.
You know, and that was a big bomb. It was so close, and you could see the frustration, right? Because
he was frustrated last night.
oh, he clearly was walking back in front of the coach that was on TV the whole time. You know, but if I take any hope away from that, is that there's at least the potential, maybe, that they can get a little more on the same page for that in this week ahead.
That's why you have Tyreek like 20 to 25 spots higher than Jalen Waddle in your rankings, because if one of them is going to catch a 70-yard pass for a touchdown, it's more likely to be Tyreek, because while Jalen Waddle is incredibly fast, Tyreek Hill is incredibly, incredibly fast. So, that is it's a great point. He was first underthrown, then he was overthrown. Maybe we find the just get right moment next Sunday against the Patriots. But the blueprint is out right now. You're gonna just make Miami earn it on the ground. That's why they need Raheem Mostert back. Devon Achane's an incredible player. He's not going to break a tackle against a big player.
All the penalties, too, because think of all the illegal shifts that were called, and I think that is a function of not working together. So if you got rid of even half of the penalties that they had and some of those plays that were called back, I do think there was a little more hope to come out of the Miami offense than we're maybe giving it credit
Kind
for.
of feels like we're at the point where this Dolphins offense is like the Green Bay Packers of week 2 and 3, where it's like, I'm not trusting anyone right now other than the running back. And even that, I feel a little bit uncomfortable with where we are, totally. Which doesn't feel really good. On the other side, it was just the running backs, because with Will Levis getting hurt, Mason Rudolph came out, didn't look great. Stephania, what can you tell us about Will Levis?
Did the thing that you panic about when you are somebody with a medical eye and you're watching a quarterback try to stretch out for yardage, and that is you dive with your arm outstretched, which is never good for the shoulder. Ask Cam Newton. That's how he ended up with his shoulder problems.
True.
It was pretty, though. He pointed his toes and everything.
Make
he got an ooh out of me.
I mean, I should just turn this segment over to him. Is this what Will Levis is facing?
Don't do it. It's going to be one of these for a month.
But, seriously, you saw him loosening up. You saw him trying
Liz
to throw.
broke her microphone.
Oh, and right on cue. Right on cue.
It goes underneath. I got it. You keep going, Stephania. I got you.
So that's how badly Liz wants to avoid any conversation on the Titans. So I'm just going to go from Will Levis to the running backs, and that Tony Pollard, to me, there was excitement for me to see the way he's running because he just struggled that first year back from the ankle injury. And this is the Tony Pollard that they signed in Tennessee. And I just couldn't be happier for him.
Clearly the guy in Tennessee.
Yes.
And I want to give the Titans their flowers for how they have utilized and maximized Tony Pollard through the first 4 games of the season. They go into a bye this week. They've done an excellent job getting the most out of Tony Pollard on a deal that now looks like a very fair one after a very curious season last year for Tony Pollard. Not trying to dunk on the Titans after a big win last night, their first of the season, leaving just the Jaguars as the winless teams in the NFL. But Calvin Ridley, man, that's confusing.
Oh,
yeah.
It's
so
confusing. Like, as a fantasy manager, I guess what I would just say is I get it. They didn't necessarily need to air it out a bunch last night, especially with their backup quarterback in against a terrible team. It's just odd to spend $23 million a year on a guy and then seemingly not lean on him or make him a priority at all.
Yeah.
Very odd usage last night for Calvin Ridley, and a very up and down season, which some would argue that's been what he's been since he was traded from Atlanta to Jacksonville. But yeah, I think we are all craving more from Calvin Ridley, and we have not gotten it so far through 4 games.
They're going to be throwing the ball 45 times a game if they can help it. They may
Yeah,
have
so
to
it depends who
because they're
playing,
down.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if Rudolph starts out of the bye, by the week.
Well, you know, the Titans insist that Will Levis healthy is going to be their guy. This is what they're saying after
They built
last
around
night.
him.
but
He better be.
Yeah.
I insist that might not be the case.
I'm just telling you. I'm just really.
I know you're the messenger
I'm
here.
relaying the message
right,
that
that's
was
right.
delivered. But well, and who's to say? We'll see what happens with his shoulder. The number of possibilities, so more to come there.
Shout out Nick Folk.
Dude, so good. Talk about 40-year-olds that are actually crushing it in the NFL right now.
Guy's ridiculous.
By the way, shout out to all kickers right now because they are crushing it, and we're seeing over 50-yard field goals made on a more regular basis than we ever have before. Everybody's trying to catch up to my guy, Brandon Aubrey.
That's exactly what it is.
That's true. I got to say, the last thing, I know we have to go before our next segment. I swear Jake Bates from the Lions is like, if you told me 3 weeks from now a YouTube video drops of like, I'm an NFL kicker and I tried to graze every goalpost in an NFL game and here's what happened. Every extra point was literally within 3 inches of the goalpost last night.
Yes.
I had to wait for them to call it once.
Yes.
I was like, did that go through?
Rosie was getting nervous every single time. By the way, it helped having a couple of Holmes brews from our buddies, sames out there, because that helped kind of alleviate some of the fears because
Relax.
Jake Bates, it was a roller coaster of an experience, even though they all went in for that one. All right.
Be careful on those triples from Holmes.
You got to be careful. They are fantastic. All right. When we come back, we're going to dive into a bunch of injuries with our Answering the Bell segment. Stick around. Back here in Fantasy Focus, Daniel Dopp, Liz Loza, Stephania Bell, and Field Yates. Stephania, you are going to be the queen of this segment, as you always are. This is why people really want to listen on Tuesday, Stephania. We want to find out what we can know about these injuries. Are we going to have to pivot? Are we going to be okay heading into the week? So you have every single answer. You assured me. You know
I'll be
everything.
here crying during this.
Stop. When you have answers, but they really it means more questions than
Yes,
answers.
that's where we're at.
We get more information on Monday, and it usually leaves us with more questions than answers. So
Can we start with Rasheed Rice?
sure
do we have
can.
answers, or do we have more questions?
we
with that
have
one?
more questions and answers. But here's the thing: we said yesterday that according to Adam Schefter's report, they had feared a torn ACL for Rasheed Rice.
Yep.
We talked about the fact that his knee was hyperextended with his foot planted, which is never good for many structures in the knee. Well, now. Yesterday, Adam reported that there's some uncertainty around what the situation is, and it sounds like it's unclear whether the ACL is torn or not. Now, let me explain something. You can have partial tears of the ACL, but we really don't hear about that much. Why do we not hear about it? Because ACL, it's really a functional stability of the ligament. If it is torn, I'm going to make up a number, 80%, but you have a functionally unstable knee, then it's a knee that requires surgery for an ACL reconstruction because you need that stability of the knee.
Okay.
But technically, it's still intact. So I think there's some semantics here. We don't know whether the ACL is torn or not. Also, you can have swelling in the knee after an injury like this that makes it difficult to evaluate all the structures on imaging. And so they may want to wait and re-image certain things. There's a number of things that are happening in the background. And then once they gather all the information, there may be a conversation with the player about, here's what we're seeing. Is this something we can try to play through, that you would want to play through? We can do this. We can fix that. That's why I mean more questions than answers. And if anyone tells you they know exactly what's going on, they don't. Because if Rasheed Rice is seeking multiple opinions, which is normal, by the way, I want to emphasize that is normal, and there's additional testing, that means that all the questions are not yet answered.
Well, what is that? What does that intimate that he could return by? I mean, I know that you're not. I'm not putting you on the spot, but like, if his knee is
You
busted,
sort of are.
his knee is busted. Like,
Here's what I'll say.
Because
So
they
I'll
don't
answer because
like-
not that I know
No, but-
anything medically, but I would say hearing everything that Stephania has said and trying to as best understand Adam's reporting so far, we're running into waivers tonight. I am not dropping Rasheed Rice this week.
That was the question.
I'm going to keep him.
you are
And I'm going to keep him for this week. And because he's simply too valuable.
because he's a top 5 receiver.
Correct. That I have no idea whether there is a chance that he is back within, I'm just going to make this number up, 8 weeks. But if there is a chance that we have Rasheed Rice from weeks 12 through 17, 18, whatever that, not great at math, whatever. The postseason push, basically. There's nobody other than Christian McCaffrey that's more valuable to have on my IR spot than Rashee Rice, and that I would figure it out somewhere else on my bench this week. That I would drop somebody else if I needed to add someone.
Yeah,
Now,
I was going to say my qualifier would be it depends where I am. Because what Field's talking about, waiting 8 weeks, that's what we're talking. We're not talking about Rashee Rice being back in like a week or two.
That's the
most
threshold,
likely.
Yeah.
And if I need to do something now, then I need to do something now. But I still, like, if you have the luxury of waiting to get a little more information, Andy Reid said there's not going to be any answers until next week. So you already know you're going to be in the dark and for another week or so.
Rule of thumb for me would be strongly advised trying to keep it in for this week and hoping for the best here. If you're absolutely pressed up against it because you have this unusual lineup construction where you're bad and you have a bunch of guys on bye this week, we have the first week of bye this upcoming week. I hear you. You got a bunch of Lions on your team, Titans.
Eagles.
I'm hoping your team is okay. We're going to keep our fingers crossed here. And, you know, it's obviously an evolving situation.
Mm-hmm.
We could get a tweet from Adam this afternoon saying, hey, you know what, before they even got the answers they were looking for, they just decided, whatever, IR's up. Who knows? None of us know.
Right.
That's where I'm at right now. That would be my stance going into waivers. As I set my waivers this morning in various leagues, and I have more Rashee Rice exposure than any other player in the league this year.
Oh.
Then he's tied with Malik Neighbor. I got lucky. That was not like, haha, like I told you guys so, right? Like that's just sometimes the chips fall in your favor. I'm not dropping him. That's been my stance at all.
If you can help it.
I can help
If you can help it.
Yes. Yeah, but I like.
If you've got A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, it's like a tough one because they're also both on IR right now.
Well, that's what I mean. How many IR spots? You have to prioritize your IR spots. And
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just think like he's a top 5 wide receiver when he's healthy right now.
But what will he be when he gets back?
I'm, you know,
That's the question.
Don't know for sure, but like.
Stephania told us
Another
that we might have
question.
more questions than
There we
answers,
go.
and this is where we're at.
You're
Let's
proving
rip
my
through these.
point.
It's a big one, though. Yeah.
Let's talk about a couple of tight ends, Stephania. Evan Ingram. Is there any chance that we're going to get positive news on him returning here in week 5?
There is, and Doug Peterson already told the media that they are hopeful to have him back this week. So I think when it initially happened, remember, it was week 2. He was a scratch before the game because of injuring his hamstring during warmups.
Yep.
I think they felt like 3 weeks would sort of be the max of the amount of missed time that he had. He's got to get through a week of practice and prove it, but the hope is that Ingram is back this week.
I just want to say congratulations to Jaguars fans. That's the first bit of good news they've gotten this season. So just want
And
you
even
guys
then, it's iffy.
Yeah.
revel in this moment while you have it.
Yeah. Let's be excited and hopeful that he can actually do something at the tight end position because we need a bunch of guys. All right, speaking of the tight end spot, I want to talk about a couple of guys that could potentially be designated to return sometime soon, Stephania.
Yes, your doppelganger, perhaps.
That's right, my guy, TJ Hawkinson. Where are we at on TJ and his potential?
So this
return?
is really interesting because we've been talking since training camp about how excited the Vikings were with his progress coming back from that ACL surgery. Remember, he had this injury late. His surgery wasn't until January. You look at, on average, a 9-month window for return. So we're getting close to that now. But the Vikings have talked about opening his practice window soon, but they have an unusual conundrum because they have a game in London this week. So if you look at the Vikings schedule, they go to London this week, then they have a bye in week 6, then they play his former team, the Lions, at home week 7, which would seem like a good opportunity for him to return. But Kevin O'Connell made a really good point. We want to make sure he gets enough practice time before putting him into a game. And then the practice window, they have the 21 days. So if a team goes to London early and he's not going to get much benefit from practicing, why not hold off? So they're kind of evaluating now where to open it up. But if he doesn't come back in week 7, could be the following is a week 8 Thursday night game at Los Angeles with the Rams. Then they're home against the Colts week 9, so I think it'll be one of those 2 weeks most likely.
7, 8, 9, somewhere in that window, depending on how things progress. All right, well, hopefully we get him back because he is one of those guys that can lift the tight end position that we need as well.
Or can.
What about Nick Chubb, Stephania? Obviously, like a huge injury last year. Like, are we going to see him?
This is like just root for the guy right now. Kevin Stefanski said he is expected to start practicing on Wednesday.
Wow.
And I am surprised, but in a pleasant way. Now, it depends how much practice time. Are they going to give him the full few weeks to come, to ramp up from this? And then when he returns, I think the important thing for fantasy managers is The Browns have to be smart. This was a multi-ligament knee injury on a guy who'd had a multi-ligament knee injury before. I don't expect a full workload out of the gate whenever he comes back.
That's a tough one. All right. Well, like you said, this is just as much rooting for the player as it is anything else here in fantasy.
But I don't mind adding him now. Like, before the season, drafting him was a bit perilous for this reason, is that you didn't know what was going to happen in the first 4 weeks of the season with other injuries. Now we have a bit more clarity on when Nick Chubb could return. On top of that, we also, like, you may be in a spot where you've somehow largely dodged the injury bug so far, or you play a league with a deeper bench. I think he's a totally, if he's still available in some percentage of leagues, I think he's a worthwhile consideration right now.
Okay. Stephania, I got one more. Jonathan Brooks. It's tough because like he didn't practice all preseason, all off season, and now he's gonna, I think, be designated potentially sometime
soon. But I don't think it's this week. I think that they're hoping that they open the practice window soon. But this is another one. Ramp up time is required for him to acclimate to football, coming off the ACL and being a rookie.
And by the way,
they're
going to be very careful with this one.
Yeah, this is their investment, right? So they don't need him in week 9. They need him for his rookie contract, right?
Yes. Yep. All right. When we come back, now that we got all of that injury information, we're going to look at the waiver wire, who you should be adding here in week 4 for week 5. Back here on Fantasy Focus, Daniel Dopp, Liz Loza, Stephania Bell, Field Yates, talking about the week 5 waiver wire. Before we talk about who we're adding, a couple people on bye this week. Obviously, the Detroit Lions and that entire offense. Los Angeles Chargers, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Tennessee Titans. So really, it's kind of like the Eagles and Lions, with a couple of random guys left over. Liz, I want to ask you first. At the wide receiver spot, you and I sat down and had lunch yesterday, talked about a handful of wide receivers.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
All right.
You had to deal with the power issue.
Yeah, you were doing your own
be
thing.
Good point. Good point.
If you were to look at waivers this week and there was one wide receiver, there's a couple of guys that I think are worthwhile, but if you had to pick one wide receiver, who are you looking to grab off the waivers?
Wan'Dale Robinson is still available. I think he, in terms of volume, yardage, obviously not incredible, but he has, 38 targets through 4 games. That defense in New York is not going to stop Daniel Jones from throwing, or whichever quarterback,
whoever it may be,
is under center.
Yep.
He's hauled in 68% of his targets so far this season. Again, YPR 7.5 yards per time. It's not great, right? He's a short yardage guy, but in PPR-friendly formats, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he is the PPR king right now. He is crushing. He's like Jarvis Landry style right now.
Only rostered in 27% of leagues right now.
Yeah.
If you had a quarterback change field, would you feel like this feels mean to say, but like, can it get worse than Daniel Jones for Wan'Dale Robinson?
I think Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback for a while, by the way. Like, it's not like he's been unbelievable, but I don't think he's been terrible either.
Yeah.
I think he's been fine.
So some of the reports of like they're looking to add some either competition or veteran backups.
I think the way that they would potentially make a move is if they completely tumble to like 1-9, and they're worried about the fact, and we're getting in the weeds here a little bit, but Daniel Jones' contract includes $23 million in injury protection for next year, which means if he can't pass a physical by the start of the new league year because he has a torn ACL, then the team would owe him $23 million if they waived him because of his health.
Okay.
Cut him because of his health. So you guys famously may remember the Commanders sat Robert Griffin III because he had this injury guarantee that if he was unable to pass a physical, he would have gotten $25 million. He became the scout team safety. The point is, teams may look at it through that lens, but I think he's the guy right now because they're 1-3, but like a relatively competitive 1-3, right? Like they could be 3-1. At least 2-2 easily. If they had a kicker in week 2, they would be 2-2. Right?
I am with you on that one. All right. Love Wan'Dale Robinson. We talked about him a bunch, actually last week on the Waiver Wire show. So he's someone that I agree with should be added. Phil, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
A couple other guys that we've looked at. Xavier Legette, obviously with Andy Dalton being able to make that Panthers team not look too bad. Dontayvion Wicks was really good this last week.
Yeah.
Handful of guys there. And what about Juju Smith-Schuster? Is there a chance that he could be a guy in Kansas City knowing that they don't really have many wide receivers?
I think if you play, and this is, I mentioned this in the preseason, like sometimes I get stuck looking through the lens of like specific leagues that I play in, like a 14-team league or a 16-team league, like with 2 flex spots, which is what the War Room is. And it's like, I don't know if Juju is rostered yet, but I bet he will be by the time waivers run tomorrow because it's not a strong bet that he is going to dominate touches from the Chiefs wide receivers, but it's a bet, right? It's possible. I mean, the competition is incredibly narrow, right? Like Sky Moore feels like borderline persona non grata in Kansas City's wide receiver room. Justin Watson is what he is, right?
Right.
Like does more like occupying space down the field and like getting a bunch of targets. Is there anybody in that Chiefs wide receiver room that you're saying to yourself, like, I know Juju's not great, but that guy is so great that like he has to be the man? I don't think there is one. Is there?
No.
I don't think so. I'm still stuck on occupying space down the field. Like, I'd be so bummed if I was the person occupying space.
I mean, you know what though?
No,
Like,
if I had all those rings, I'd be happy to occupy
that's fair.
space in Kansas City.
he's a Penn grad, he probably looks at it like through like a physics lens. He's like, the centrifugal force created, I don't know, is that correct terminology? Whatever.
But
It is a thing.
The
It is a
force,
thing,
yeah.
right.
I mean, he makes clutch catches, right? But it's
Yeah.
not like he's a heavily targeted guy.
Right.
Right.
So my bet would be that if I had to, like, do you guys know when you get like a flag in like a cocktail, like a little tiny umbrella?
Yep.
Yeah.
In a cocktail.
in a
I'm not
Mai
going to plant a flag, but I'm going to plant a cocktail
An umbrella.
Yeah, I can
in the
relate
ground
to
on
this
Juju's
analogy.
juice.
There's
right?
an argument there, though,
for
right?
sure.
You can see there's familiarity, obviously. He
Yeah.
could be a short-range target. Patrick Mahomes isn't passing deep a lot these days, which is obviously in another
boy.
conversation affecting his fantasy production. So there is a conversation there in deeper leagues and PPR-friendly leagues that he could provide some value,
Cocktail
some
umbrella.
cocktail umbrella shade.
Ideally, I don't want to poo-poo Juju, but I would much rather see Xavier Worthy just get like 7 to 9 targets, 8 to 10 targets.
We can all wish cast, friend.
You know that
Yeah,
that's
let's-
gonna
let's speak it
I
into
don't feel
existence.
it.
I
feel that
don't
happen.
like.
Yeah.
I'm with Stephania here for this reason. It's not like the Chiefs have been good on offense so far. Like they've needed more out of the wide receiver room.
they have.
I think he'll see a natural boost, but I don't see a significant boost. Like I don't think 10 targets a week is in the offing for Xavier Worthy. He's kind of at like 4.5, 5 right now.
Can we get to 6 to 7 maybe?
That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I am personally hoping for. She Rice, on top of like hogging targets in a good way, does things that I don't think the Chiefs want to expose Xavier Worthy to. A ton of like short yardage opportunities where he just makes people miss or run through defenders. Like that's not the strength of Xavier Worthy's game.
All right. That's
More
fair.
Travis Kelce bump, I think and hope as a result.
I'm with you on that one. All right, let's talk about a couple of running backs here on the waiver wire. Speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, is there a chance that Kareem Hunt, Stephania Bell, is someone that you're looking to add off of waiver wires after what you saw from him in week 4?
I mean, just the fact that he was out there when we thought that maybe he wasn't even going to be active in this week makes him interesting again because he's occupying space on the field.
Yeah.
Hey-o.
And there's familiarity.
You know,
Absolutely.
familiarity, right? I mean, there's a reason that they brought him back, and Andy Reid basically said for being there and just having to adjust to the offense that quickly, which is a hard thing to do when you've not been there, that he thought that he did a really good job. So,
And this is not an anti-Carson Steele thing, but it kind of feels like he fumbled the opportunity that he had been given.
Multiple fumbles lost
yeah,
already this season, right?
Yeah, their ball security is a thing. Look,
What they say, right?
Even the Chiefs to me feel like the team that is the most. I don't know what the word is, but when you look at their record, it has nothing to do with the product you're actually watching. Like I don't feel like they look like a team that's undefeated.
In
Right?
basketball, where they play a ton more games,
Right.
they say like, hey, the Lakers were a 43-win team last year with a 39-win team differential.
Yes.
Right? It's like, and so the Chiefs, I don't know how many points they've allowed versus given up, but it's so close
It's
that
so
normally you're not
close,
4-0 with
and they
a-
don't look like
know what? Let's
themselves.
do
They
this.
don't look like that. So to me, I feel like they need to put the better product out there, and whatever combination is going to make that happen, they're going to go with it. They lost their key running back as well.
Dude, I mean, they have
Right.
just been ravaged by
So
injury.
yeah,
Obviously, Pacheco.
I'm shocked. We'd be talking about other teams if they have one big injury. We're like, hey, well, who knows what's going to happen now that so and so is out. The Chiefs have lost 2 top wide receivers and their top running back, and yet they're undefeated.
Yes. It's,
So they
defense.
can do a patchwork quilt operation better than anyone else in the league right
Yeah,
now.
their differential is plus 20. The Vikings, the other 4-0 team, plus 57. So two sort of different
Yeah.
4-0
Wow.
starts. I would say that I do have interest in Kareem Hunt as well. I know that seems crazy to think, given where things were just like 2 weeks ago. But Carson Steele, Daniel, you're correct. Like, ball security is job security. And this team is so average. Were you going to say that?
Well, no, it's just ironic, though, since Kareem Hunt fumbled on the first ever carry he had as a
No?
Kansas
Yeah.
City Chief.
Well, you know what, though? That was the only time he's ever fumbled as a Chief.
Well, he learned his lesson.
Yeah, he did in a hurry. So Kareem Hunt, probably has a bigger role because this team is not good enough on offense to have careless turnovers. And when you're this good and you're playing for this much, you have to be mindful of, like,
Slim margins.
he's not dynamic enough. He's not a threat in the passing game. This is Carson Steele. This is a great story. An undrafted free agent making the team is always a good story. But he's more
so
vulnerable.
unlikely to make the team that apparently there was a family wedding going on, even
Yeah,
though he was
literally.
taking
It's
her
his
to
wedding.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Kind of feels like if I was the Kansas City Chiefs, given all of the injuries that I have to the wide receiver spot, I would want to kind of lean on the running game, even though I have the best quarterback in the NFL. Like,
No, but the running game isn't that good right now.
well, maybe
So-
Kareem Hunt can revitalize that.
And by the way, so let's look at who the Chiefs are playing next.
Saints on Monday night, right?
Yeah, they got the Saints, then they have a bye, then they're at the 49ers. So you don't like the run game there, but then they're at the Raiders. So they could put like I expect them to be. I don't know what I expect because I am surprised that they're undefeated. Right?
That's the right answer,
yes, yeah.
Keep
Stephania.
waiting for
That's
the
right.
other shoe to drop for this team. So maybe they're waiting for the 49ers.
All right, a couple other running backs, more than just Kareem Hunt. I do want to mention this. Bucky Irving is just over that 50% rostered mark, but he should be added in every single fantasy league. Clearly looks like the better running back than Rashad White, and I do believe that we all think it is a when, not an if, for him to become the running
Also,
back.
just a
that
little
takes
asterisk.
over.
2 weeks ago, I believe, White played through a groin issue. And as Stephania has taught us so well, those soft tissue issues certainly can recur.
Yep.
So there might be more than just an efficiency issue with White.
100%. Braylon Allen, also a guy that we would add if you have a spot with what you've seen from him in that
I
Jets
like
offense.
Braylon Allen. That'd be
And
somebody I'd be looking at.
Tank Bigsby as well with Travis Etienne being banged up a little
You
bit.
know how people always say, like, we've never seen Daniel Dopp and TJ Hawkinson in the same place?
True
I get
statement.
that often with Braylon Allen. People are like, I've never seen Braylon Allen and Field Yates in the same place.
Is that right?
Isn't that weird?
Okay.
That
That's
is
the guy you're gonna
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Something about like muscle distribution. I don't,
Yeah, it's
again, I'm not the one who says it. People say it to me, so
the
You've
internet.
heard.
The internet, yeah.
I lift. What can I say?
I thought maybe it was your blazing speed on the sand.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
some
All right, all right. Let's talk about some quarterbacks
No
here. Quarterbacks, it's a new segment. You Gotta Switch, brought to you by the new Boost Mobile 5G network. We're discussing an overperforming player on our benches or waivers that you need to switch to add to your starting lineup. And I think
Good options this week for that.
there are, dude. How do you not start Justin Fields after what you've seen from him and what he's done with his legs the last couple of
Well,
weeks?
because it's one really great game, right? Like a little more hope. Liz gave me that.
No, keep going, keep going.
Last week was awesome, but they play the Cowboys this week. That's how you start them. Is that you feel like it's potentially repeatable because that Cowboys defense has been
banged
largely not good.
Yep.
And they're hurt.
What was that look at? Was that look like I disagree?
Well, it wasn't an I disagree. I do think that Fields, the knock on Fields was that he wasn't a good passer, and he cleared 200 yards, what he had 250 2 weeks ago, over 300 this week, and he is using his legs. So he's also learning. Like, if you watch the tape, he's evolving and actually looks comfortable in an offense that is believing in him. So I don't think it's as wild, but I think your point about the matchup is the best one.
Yeah, so prior to this, his best finish was QB 13 after going QB1 this past week. So he was fine up until this point. Under 12 in each of his first 2 games. He's heating up, though. Good matchup this weekend. Justin Fields, absolutely a name to monitor. It's not just the Jalen Hurts replacements. It's the possibility of being done with Patrick Mahomes right now, as an example.
Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson, I think you could continue to make the conversation of, am I benching Patrick Mahomes for a handful of these guys? Justin Fields is absolutely one of them. Sam Darnold, another guy, Liz Loza, that it feels like fantasy managers. Fields, you can make that noise.
No, the Jets this week, though.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's just
for
the
me this
matchup?
week. He's been amazing, and part of me is like, do we really doubt him again?
a revenge game.
Like that Jets defense, like, dude, like they actually are all going to be on the practice report this week with the back injury because they've been carrying the offense this past Sunday. Jeez, that was a tough one to watch, huh?
It's
Knicks had -7 passing yards in the first half. I know that bad weather and the Broncos aren't electric, but the Jets defense is still exceptionally good.
They are. And
I'm a little you'll see, like, I have a lot of great things to say about Sam Darnold before they go into their bye, but this week I do not have him as a top 15 play.
All right. And then we already mentioned Geno Smith a little earlier in the show as someone that you could potentially look at off of waivers. All right, that's You Gotta Switch, brought to you by the new Boost Mobile 5G network. One thing, you could potentially look at Tucker Kraft off the tight end position.
Yeah.
And that's it. I think we just leave it there. He's the only tight end that
talked about it
Talked about it yesterday.
Yep.
All right, when we come back, a little bit more here from Fantasy Focus. Stick around. Back here on Fantasy Focus, Daniel Dopp, Liz Loza, Stephania Bell, Field Yates. Guys, it's our digital-only segment, which means we can let our hair down a little bit.
Are you going to actually let your hair down?
No, not this time. Not today. The ladies in makeup did some
You know,
nice
you
things.
did that slow-mo head shake in the water in the ocean.
Yes,
down
and you
in the
posted it on
Bahamas and-
Instagram.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that was
you
like
got it.
that was the only thirst trap video that I have ever put on the internet, and it did pretty well.
Did it go viral?
No big deal.
Out
Between
in
my
your
hair and
life.
my
Look at
ankles,
you.
people like the top and the bottom of me. It's just all the stuff in the middle. They're not really into.
Okay, we're gonna
Keep taking
leave
off
that
your
alone.
shirt. So.
So, all right.
Leave that alone.
First question we have from our mailbag comes from D-Flow. It says, as a Rashee Rice manager, I've had him in the flex all 4 weeks so far. With that being said, due to the injury, who's a better option with higher upside going forward? Jerome Ford or George Pickens?
First of all, D-Flow. Talk about a flex by you. I've got Rashee Rice in the flex.
Yeah, so he's not even good enough to be a starting wide receiver for me.
Respect to you, D-Flow. I think we might get consensus here. I'm going George Pickens as the higher upside player.
GP, I'm with you.
Yeah, I'll take the receiver.
I agree, although I did look at the numbers, and both of these players have double-digit fantasy points in 3 of 4 outings.
Yeah.
You would like to think that Ford, as a flex option because of potential touchdown upside, might have the higher floor, but if he's chasing upside, then it's always going to be Pickens. And if Nick Chubb could potentially be returning,
That's
then
the
that's
thing,
another
too.
consideration.
With Nick Chubb returning soon, the Cowboys being a good matchup for George Pickens this weekend,
Yeah.
I think that Pickens generally will represent the higher upside player compared to Jerome Ford.
I would agree with that. All right, Joe Dwyer wants to know, when do we hit the panic button on Ramondre Stevenson and Josh Jacobs? Ramondre had a tough week last week. Josh Jacobs kind of feels like he's in a time split, which we
Emmanuel
talked
Wilson.
about yesterday with Emmanuel Wilson. Are you ready to panic on either one
Well,
of these wide receivers?
yesterday.
Or running backs?
Yes, yesterday. Well, Ramondre, we talked about fumbling earlier. Ramondre has also had a fumbling issue. He's averaged under 4 yards per carry for 3 straight weeks. His only really good outing was when the Pats surprised the snot out of Cincinnati, and I just don't think game flow, particularly when you have a complimentary back like Antonio Gibson, who we all know is a converted wide receiver and can have usage in the passing game. I just don't think he's going to get the volume.
The only thing for
necessary.
me about this question is, like, if I'm panicking on these running backs, who am I
What are you doing?
starting over them? Because they both, even though Josh Jacobs has been in a little bit of a timeshare, like I still don't know who you're going to feel more confident in behind him.
Here's what I like here. This is my thought. Is Daniel brings up a good point. It's really hard. It's easy for us to say, like, don't play this player. It's harder for us to give you an option of who to play in favor of them. The Patriots play the Dolphins this weekend. As we saw last night, that Dolphins team has no margin for error, and defensively, honestly, like, for a team that spent a lot of money on the defense, and I know they had some injuries last night, but welcome to the NFL.
also gassed.
Right?
Yeah, when the defense is on the field
all the time,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like, what defense am I watching? They don't seem like a dominant defense by any way, shape, or form. If Ramondre has a big game this weekend, which would include A, not fumbling, and B, the Patriots keeping it close enough or winning, which I think is possible right now. They're playing in New England. I know it sounds crazy, but after last night, right?
1 point underdogs.
It's just so
Patriots are
painful.
underdogs.
1 point underdogs.
So,
Jacoby Brissett versus Tylen.
Stu Puntley.
Yeah.
It's another revenge
Can we
game.
get Drake May, please?
Yeah.
Anyways, if Ramondre has a big game this week, that might be the opportunity to, like, I'll tell you one. Like, I would, if Ramondre goes off this weekend, just in general, I'd prefer Josh Jacobs to Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
You got Ramondre, I'd make an offer for Josh Jacobs. You could say, hey, like, Ramondre's had 2 big games. Josh Jacobs has had not as many big games. Like, maybe do it. I just think the player in the better offense with a really, really good workload, like, to me, that's fine. I am pretty panicked, though, on Ramondre because this Patriots offense is so limited that in games when they're not playing the Dolphins, you're a bit more concerned about them falling behind 14-0 and then just him not having game flow in his favor.
I don't love that. Don't love it.
No.
But I still feel like I would, like, if this is a spot where you see something from Ramondre Stevenson, even if you're selling him after this big game, what do you have at the running back spot behind Ramondre? Maybe you've got a Brian Robinson Jr.
We do like a 1-for-1, right?
Yeah.
Like a Ramondre for a Josh Jacobs would be one that I would consider. Ramondre for a Najee Harris would be something that I would consider. Names like that, Ramondre for Tony Pollard would be one that I would consider, right? Because guys who either had less cachet coming into the season or have had not perfect starts that I would say, I would consider those names as upgrades over Ramondre.
Fair. All right, next question comes from Josh. Says, is it time to bench Zay Flowers for Deontay Johnson?
Turns out that was 2 weeks ago, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, one of these guys is getting a massive
Volume.
target share, and the other one is Zay Flowers, which is what's so difficult because we were so excited about Zay Flowers coming into the season. But if the Ravens are playing the way that they want to play football, Stephania, they're running with our guy, Derrick Henry, as much as possible, and Lamar Jackson's going to keep doing his thing on the ground.
Right, and they have shown themselves to be wanting to win this on the ground. And Zay Flowers, we thought that this was going to be such an opportunity for him because the run game would allow for him to have some of these big plays, but we're just not seeing it. As somebody who has Zay Flowers on several rosters,
Yeah.
I would be going with Deontay Johnson because he has been unlocked by the presence of Andy Dalton. So, he's the hot. You want to go with the hot hand?
Yes.
This is the hot hand.
That's the hot hand.
The
Right there.
Panthers' defense is also going to keep Andy Dalton passing.
Panthering?
Yeah, panthering. Yes.
Yeah.
I think Zay Flowers will have big games. Like, I'm not down on him entirely. I just think the inconsistency in terms of what you're seeing out of the Ravens, and they're very hard to read. I mean, this is the team that John Harbaugh is continuing to talk about how awesome the Mark Andrews blocking is for Derrick Henry.
Stop.
He's trolling us now.
He really is.
He was last week when he said those things too. Two things here. It's so interesting because this is one of the most popular questions in season is like, for the rest of the season, where do you have this guy ranked? Which I understand why we do that, but I've been trying to institute this like, let's talk about it for like the next month ahead.
Yep.
I think you could do it a different way as well that I was just thinking about in the context of Deontay Johnson. It's almost like a confidence index. Right now, what category of wide receiver does Deontay Johnson fit into for you? Because like we have the super duper top of the heap that I think would be the likes of CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, a few others, right? That I'm sure I'm bypassing a couple of names. Is like the next rung below a guy who you're absolutely starting and you have pretty darn high hopes for where you find Deontay Johnson at the moment?
Right now, it feels that way. I mean, you're talking like
27 targets over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you in that. He just looks totally different with Andy Dalton under center. I mean, this whole offense, I know we talked about it yesterday.
And Adam Thielen is hurt. Yeah.
So the second thought I have, and just like, bury this one in your brain for a little bit. This is, I am using the football instincts here. This is not information I have. But the Panthers are 1-3 right now. Deontay Johnson is in the final year of his contract. He makes just $7 million. It must be nice to make just
Only
$7
$7 million.
to work in
What's
a
that
field.
like, Field?
Yeah.
I'd like to know. Is that enough to fix my generator? Anyways, that's a salary that is palatable enough or convertible enough on the Panthers side that, like, if Carolina falls to 1-6, they could make, like, I could see them saying, hey, you know what? The long-range view here is let's get a pick from somebody.
Yep.
They already owe their second-round pick to Liz's Bears.
Ooh.
They have a second-round pick from the Rams from last year's draft. So from a trade up from last year's draft. But if you're Carolina, what's valuable to you?
Is this where
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that like Deontay Johnson would be a very rare, excellent football player on a low salary that a team who currently rosters him might say to itself, like, if they haven't gotten an extension done now, they didn't trade for him yesterday, right? They traded for him in March. They may have had talks. And maybe they've already made it very clear, hey, we want to do it after the season. He wants to do it after the season. He wants to ball out and show that he's worth $25 million a year. I don't know. But if they haven't got anything done right now and it hasn't been because of lack of effort, I would say if I'm a team out there, I'd be calling.
You think Brett Veach can find enough money in the Kansas
The
City
Chiefs
sofa
are
cushion?
so tight like against the cap that like people need to stop these fantasy trades where it's like, I get it. Like
$7 million though.
Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams would be awesome in Kansas City.
Well, but we're talking
Rams
Deontay
and-
Johnson.
I know
not
Deontay
him.
Johnson is $7 million.
Yeah, but I'm saying people need to stop with the fantasy stuff of guys who make $30 million this year, or $18 million in salary. Like
Or the Tyreek return.
that's going to require that team doing the Chiefs a massive, massive favor too. Like, and the Chiefs have to pay a huge, huge price. So, anyways, Kansas City happens to have 2 third-round picks this year. Just food for thought.
Oh, just throwing that one out there. No big deal. All right. By the way, Deontay Johnson draws Liz's Chicago Bears this week, so we'll see how that.
Good defense, really good defense. But a revenge game for Dalton again.
Oh man, it's just going to be nonstop
Every week
revenge
is
game.
going to be a revenge
Yeah.
game
Kinda what
for
happened.
him.
I love it.
I forgot he played for the Cowboys until recently.
Oh, that's when I remember.
Yeah.
Will Guy 22 says, should I start thinking about Josh Allen's current inconsistency, or do you believe these are two unique
I want you to answer this
games?
one.
Yeah,
You
All right, guys,
answer
come on
this
now.
one.
I came around on this a little bit.
on.
I came around on this one a little bit. Josh Allen can still throw a million interceptions, can still have a couple of duds, but he is clearly, to me, the best fantasy football quarterback on the planet. As much as we love both Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels, if I had to pick a starting quarterback for my squad out of every single quarterback in the NFL in fantasy football, it would be Josh Allen.
I mean, you get 2 QB1 weeks. Like, how many players have been the highest scoring player at their position so far this season on 2 separate occasions? The answer is
Not
just
many.
one. It's Josh Allen.
Yeah.
There's a chance that Josh Allen's 2 worst games were in week 4 of the entire season, week 4 and week 2. So I hear you. If you have a crazy trade you could get out of, if you could get Lamar Jackson plus a starter somewhere else, I would entertain it. But, for me, as long as Josh Allen's on the field, he's going to be in my lineup if I have him on my roster.
Can you field? Well, actually, for all of you guys, can you tell me the last week that Patrick Mahomes was quarterback 1 in fantasy football?
I believe against the Bears last year, he went off.
That was the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift debut.
Yes,
that
it
when they
was.
hard launched.
Yep.
That was week 2 or 3, I believe,
Maybe a
of
little further in the
2023.
season.
Is that how you flagged the season?
Yeah.
Is by
The hard launch, yeah. In Chicago.
Was it longer ago than that, Daniel?
It was,
Okay, it was
yeah.
a while ago. Yeah.
His last top 5 game was week 7 of 2023. His
Yes.
last QB5 outing was week 7 of 2023.
Thank you for listening to the podcast, Liz. I appreciate that.
Actually, that was my stats cited in Facts versus Feelings. Thank you for reading my column.
Was that last week? Oh, man. 2 weeks ago, I said that here on the podcast. So
This is spicy. Stephania, do you have any Rasheed Rice updates?
I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
We'll
Thanks
just talk
for listening
amongst
to the pod.
ourselves.
Yeah.
What you
for
throw
what it's
down
worth,
over there.
Week 11 of 2022 was the last time that Patrick Mahomes was QB1. in fantasy
Crazy
football.
one, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
All right, we got one more here. This one comes from Dylan. We got a few more than this, but I want to save some of them for tomorrow as well, to have some fun with Mike as well. Dylan wants to know, are you trying to sell Bijan if you can get back his draft day value? I don't know what his draft day
draft? I was
What is draft
just
day
going to say, what is his draft day value? Because
For who?
For who, right? Because where did you draft him? Probably somewhere in the 1
Third,
through 9, depending on your league.
Yeah.
Depending on your league, because some people went wide receiver heavy up top.
That's fair.
So let's say it's one.
fair.
Let's say it's like in the first 9. In our leagues, it'd be 1 through 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Who are you getting back that is draft day value?
You're not getting
Lamb.
CMC.
all-
Right, because you're not trading for CMC and giving up Bijan, a player who's playing, versus one who's out and we don't know when he's returning.
I'd hold the fort here, too. I'd feel like, is it Alvin Kamara that you need to get back? Saquon Barkley?
Why
you
would
need to
the
get
Alvin
back?
Kamara or Saquon Barkley manager make that deal?
Right.
The
Saquon
idea.
Barkley's the guy, right? Jonathan Taylor just hurt the same ankle that he injured in 2022 that cost him games.
Yeah,
that
Trey
doesn't
Sermon
feel
probably
safe.
should have been mentioned in the waiver segment. by
Oh,
the way.
yeah, I know, but that is so hard to say that.
Yeah, I know.
Out
yeah,
loud.
Yeah.
Especially for you as a 49ers
Yeah,
fan.
well,
yeah.
we've seen that experiment.
In any event, I think those are all names that, like, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, getting draft day value back, that's probably a matter of interpretation. If you're saying, like, a guy that deserved to go in the first 5 picks, like Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley or
Or a guy who's
Malik Neighbors
performed
right
like
now?
they're
Yeah,
the
that's
top
what
5
Right.
running back,
Yep.
you know, because you probably wouldn't have drafted Alvin Kamara that much higher. I mean, unless you could see into a crystal ball, like you wouldn't have thought that this performance would have been the performance that we're getting out of him.
Robinson also has an opportunity share above 75%. He's the RB7 in opportunity share. I mean, where are you finding?
Falcons just can't quit Tyler Algier, Liz. They just,
They can't.
They can't. What are you going to do? But, like, honestly, I'm with Field, and I think we all kind of agree. Like, at this point, I don't know what you're going to move him for where you're going to get the same kind of value back. I would rather, especially given the state of the running back position, I'd rather just hold tight.
I would,
Yeah.
I would stay,
Yes.
as they say.
Stay.
Stay. Yeah, like we're playing blackjack.
Yeah,
We're just going to stay.
exactly.
Just going to stay.
Stay.
All right, when we come back, we're going to close out Fantasy Focus. Stick around. Do it. Back here on Fantasy Focus, Daniel Dopp, Liz Loza, Stephania Bell, and Field Yates. Guys, another fun show. Liz, in spite of the little fight that we just got into, it has been
Is that our
so
first
much
one?
fun.
I think it
so.
might be our first
I think
one.
So.
Okay.
So much fun being able to have you here. When are we going to have you back? Couple weeks?
The weekend before Halloween, it seems.
Love it.
Oh,
Okay.
yay. So in the same month, because we're in October now, so you're coming back
Yes,
in October.
coming back
Right.
this month, yes.
What has
It's
been
fun
the
for
biggest,
me.
What's the biggest standout thing, just while we have a little bit of time? What's the one thing that like you feel like you've taken away so far from the fantasy season that you either love or you hate? You can just like get it off your chest while you have the platform.
Well, I am not loving the running backs, but I am loving, because there have been so many injuries, but I am loving the volume or the value that we found with Kamara and with Connor.
Yeah,
I
they've
feel
both
like
been
those
great.
surprises and the idea that there are all of these vets, you know, we want the shiny new toy, but also the value that you can get on a tried and true vet has been really remarkable this season.
Do you want to know what I'm loving?
That's how I want to go around the table.
Because I will pound the table for these running backs who are in beyond their first contract, who are doing so well. And I am so happy to see the Saquon Barkleys of the world, the Alvin Kamara's, and eventually it will be Christian McCaffrey.
Your Aaron Jones?
Yeah, Aaron Jones thriving in Minnesota. Like, this makes my heart happy. Running backs are not done. People stop saying that after their rookie contract. There are some running backs who are basically the heartbeat of their team, and you were seeing it. Saquon Barkley did that, carried the Giants, and now he's thriving in Philadelphia. So happy for these guys.
I do want to give you a bunch of love on that Aaron Jones call, Stephania. You were the only one on the podcast that felt this way.
Him.
Like, so it's
yeah,
been great.
and you saw how much he meant to Green Bay. I think that was really cool to see.
Field, real quick, anything you got?
The rookie wide receivers meeting expectations so far. Maybe even
awesome.
exceeding them in the case of Malik Neighbors. Ryan Thomas
Neighbors.
Jr. has been great. Xavier Legette had a breakout game this past weekend. Xavier Worthy's going to have to play a big role for the Chiefs. Rome Odunze had a massive game for the Bears.
Ladd
week
McConkey
3.
scored.
Ladd McConkey's been good. And, of course, Marvin Harrison, 3 straight games with a touchdown. It was an historic wide receiver class, and so far, so good.
All right, that's going to do it for us here on Fantasy Focus. We'll be back tomorrow. Me, Mike, and Field talking rankings on Wednesday.
Hey-yo.
Thank you for watching Fantasy Focus Football presented by Boost Mobile. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. We'll see you guys tomorrow.